Luke had never needed the world beyond the fence line of his family's ranch. The sky was big enough, the land wide enough. His days began with the first hint of dawn, when the cool Montana air hung heavy with dew, and ended beneath a sweep of stars so clear it made the city lights he'd seen in pictures feel like a distant lie. Solitude was his companion. People came and went in town, and the world kept spinning out there somewhere, but Luke stayed rooted in the earth he worked with his hands. On a late summer afternoon, dust curling from the hooves of his mare, Luke noticed the unfamiliar car parked crooked at the edge of the ranch road. It didn't belong to any of the neighbors, nor to the tourists who sometimes got lost on scenic drives. A sleek, black sedan, tires sunk a little in the loose gravel, too polished for this kind of country. He reined in his horse, suspicion tightening his gut. Curiosity won out. He nudged Belle forward and approached. The man standing by the car looked lost. He was tall, lean in that city-slick kind of way, wearing jeans that hadn't seen dirt and a white button-down rolled at the sleeves. Sunglasses hid his eyes, but the set of his shoulders was clear enough, uncertain, frustrated. "You need help?" Luke asked, voice roughened by the dry air and disuse. The man turned, lowering the glasses. His eyes were a sharp blue, too alert for someone at ease. "Yeah," he said, a breath of a laugh. "Apparently Google Maps doesn't work so well out here." Luke gave a faint nod, dismounting. "Not much call for it. Where you headed?" "Supposed to be the Clearwater corporate retreat. They said it was near here, but..." He gestured helplessly at the empty land. "I must have taken a wrong turn." Luke nearly smirked. "That'd be about 10 miles back that way. You're on private land now." The man's face fell. "Sorry. I didn't see a sign." "Not your fault. Signs don't do much good when they're shot full of holes." The faintest humor crept into Luke's tone. "Name's Luke." "Evan," the man replied, extending a hand. His grip was firm, but his skin was soft. Hands used to keyboards, not rope and leather. "You'll want to head back before it gets dark. Roads ain't lit out here." Luke swung back into the saddle but paused. Something in the man's expression gave him pause, not just lost on the road, but lost somewhere deeper. "I could show you the way," Luke added, surprising himself. Evan glanced at him, something flickering in those two blue eyes. "Would you?" Luke tipped his hat. "Follow me." They rode and drove in silence, the old pickup's taillights guiding the sedan through the winding dirt paths. As they neared the retreat, a sprawl of polished cabins meant to look rustic, Luke slowed until Evan pulled up beside him. "You'll be fine from here," Luke said. "Just don't trust your phone too much." Evan hesitated, hand resting on the wheel. "Thanks. I mean it." Luke nodded, tipping his hat again. As he turned Belle toward home, Evan called after him. "Hey, Luke." He stopped, glancing back. "Why'd you help me?" The question sat between them a moment. Luke considered it, then shrugged. "Guess I know what it feels like to be out of place." Without waiting for a reply, he nudged Belle into motion. But as he rode back beneath the first flush of twilight, he found his thoughts circling the encounter. There'd been something in Evan's voice, something brittle beneath the polished surface. And against all reason, Luke felt a pull he hadn't expected, as if a door had opened somewhere inside him he'd long since nailed shut. In his chest, a quiet tension hummed. He told himself it meant nothing, just a stranger passing through. But the feeling stayed with him, persistent as the stars that soon pricked the night sky. Evan hadn't planned on returning to the ranch. He told himself it was the landscape that called him back, the clean air, the endless sky. But the truth rode closer to the surface with each passing day. His thoughts kept circling the brief exchange with Luke, the quiet steadiness in the cowboy's voice, the way his gaze had held no judgment, only an unreadable depth that unsettled and intrigued him in equal measure. By the third morning of the retreat, Evan found the scheduled workshops unbearable. Polished executives in crisp shirts spoke of market shares and expansion strategies, their words floating meaningless in the mountain air. Restless, Evan slipped away before noon, taking the rental car out again along the dirt roads, drawn by a need he could not name. When he pulled up near the ranch gate this time, Luke was already outside, tending to a length of broken fence. He looked up as the car approached, leaning lightly on the post, one brow raised. "You lost again?" he called, a flicker of amusement beneath the question. Evan stepped out, dust swirling around his shoes. "Not exactly. Just needed some air." Luke's gaze narrowed, but not unkindly. "City air's no good for breathing. You here to learn something or just wander?" Evan hesitated. Maybe both. For a moment, Luke said nothing. Then he gestured toward a nearby corral. "Come on then. Might as well make yourself useful." The hours unfolded with a quiet rhythm. Luke set him to work, cleaning out the stalls, showing him the proper way to brush down a horse, the subtle language of reins and pressure. Evan moved awkwardly at first, sleeves rolled up, sweat beading at his temples. Yet he listened, eager, the focus of a man seeking more than simple knowledge. Between tasks, they spoke in fragments. Evan shared little. His job, the retreat. The city's noise that now felt deafening in contrast to the open land. Luke, in turn, spoke even less, words measured and spare. But there was a shared current beneath their exchanges, a recognition of something neither dared name. Later, as the sun slanted gold across the fields, Luke led Evan toward a rise overlooking the valley. They sat on rough-hewn boards beneath, an ancient oak, silence stretching between them like a comfortable blanket. "You always live this way?" Evan asked softly, eyes tracing the horizon. "Since I could walk," Luke replied. He glanced at Evan. "You?" Evan exhaled, gaze darkening. "I don't know anymore. Used to think I wanted everything the city promised. Now it all feels thin." Luke studied him. People chase noise when they're running from silence. Evan looked over sharply, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "You think I'm running?" Luke gave a small shrug. "Aren't we all, one way or another?" For a long moment, neither spoke. The air shifted, charged with something fragile. Without thinking, Evan reached out, brushing a speck of dust from Luke's arm. The contact was brief, yet electric. A spark passed through both men, and they froze in its aftermath. Luke's jaw tightened and he looked away. "Careful, city boy. Not everything out here's safe." The warning was gentle, yet weighted. Evan's breath caught. "Maybe I'm tired of safe." Their eyes met then, the distance between them humming with unspoken tension. But Luke stood, breaking the moment. "Daylight's fading. You should get back." Reluctantly, Evan rose. He followed Luke to the car in silence, 1,000 unsaid words pressing against his throat. As he started the engine, Evan glanced toward the cowboy once more. "Thank you. For today." Luke met his gaze, something guarded yet softer than before flickering in his eyes. "Don't thank me yet." Evan drove off, heart pounding. In the rearview mirror, Luke's figure grew small against the vast sky, yet the connection between them felt anything but distant. That night, beneath the artificial glow of the retreat's chandeliers, Evan found himself staring out into the dark, fingers tracing the phantom memory of a touch that hadn't been meant to linger. Something had begun between them, something neither man fully understood, and deep down, Evan knew he would return. Evan returned to the ranch every chance he got, slipping away from corporate dinners and strategy meetings as though drawn by an invisible thread. The hours spent with Luke settled something restless inside him, offering a silence that didn't demand explanations. They rode together at dawn, spoke in low voices beneath the stars. The space between them, once charged with uncertainty, had narrowed into something more fragile, something neither dared claim. Luke noticed the change in himself with unease. Evan's presence had become a rhythm in his days, a quiet pulse he couldn't ignore. He caught himself watching for the sleek black car, listening for its approach. But with each passing visit, a knot of caution tightened in his gut. The city boy belonged to a different world, one built on words and deals. The risk of believing otherwise pressed at Luke's edges. One cloudless afternoon, beneath a sky too blue to hold such tension, it happened. They'd ridden out beyond the far pastures, where wildflowers grew in thick tangles and the air smelled of sage. After tying the horses beneath a crooked pine, they sat on a flat rock overlooking the valley, legs stretched out, shoulders close but not touching. For a while, neither spoke. Then Evan turned, voice low. "There's something about this place, about you. It's like I can breathe here." Luke's gaze stayed on the horizon. "That why you keep coming back?" Evan exhaled. "Partly. The rest, I'm still figuring out." Silence wrapped around them. Then, without thought, without calculation, Evan reached for Luke's hand. His fingers trembled as they closed over the rough skin, but he didn't let go. Luke's breath caught. For a heartbeat, he stayed still. Then slowly, deliberately, his fingers tightened around Evan's. The kiss that followed was unhurried and aching, a meeting of loneliness and longing forged over days of stolen glances and unsaid words. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. There was nothing to say that wouldn't ruin the fragile truth between them. Afterward, their time together grew more intimate. Evan lingered longer at the ranch, learning the rhythms of Luke's world. They shared meals beneath oil lamps, rode through silver dawns. Each moment felt suspended, as though the outside world could not intrude. But the outside world was never far. One evening, after Evan had left for the retreat, Luke returned to the barn to check the tack. Passing the open window of the ranch office, he heard a familiar voice, sharp against the quiet. "No, I've got it under control," Evan was saying, phone pressed to his ear. "He trusts me now. The ranch is perfect, isolated, undervalued. We can move once the retreat's over. I'll send the final report tomorrow." Luke's body went cold. He moved before he could think, wrenching open the door. Evan spun, color draining from his face as their eyes met. "Luke," he began. Voice breaking. Luke didn't wait. "You lied." "It's not what you think." "No?" Luke's voice was raw, sharp as barbed wire. "You're here to sell my land out from under me. Everything we—" He stopped, breath shaking. "Was any of it real?" Evan stepped forward, desperate. "It was. At first I didn't care. It was just a job. But then—" Luke backed away, fury warring with something deeper, more painful. "Don't, just don't." Evan's voice cracked. "Luke, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm not going through with it. I swear." But Luke was already turning, his heart slamming against his ribs. "Go back to your city," he said, voice hollow. "Don't come here again." The barn door slammed shut behind him. That night, beneath a sky that once seemed infinite, Luke lay awake, the weight of betrayal pressing down. He'd opened a door long kept shut, and Evan had walked through with false words and hidden motives. Across the valley, Evan sat alone in his cabin, phone discarded, head in his hands. The memory of Luke's gaze, wounded, furious, haunted him. He'd come so close to something real, and now the chasm between them seemed insurmountable. Yet even in the depth of regret, a single truth remained. He wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Evan left the retreat the next morning, not waiting for the closing speeches or the shuttle to the airport. His rental car traced the familiar dirt roads one final time, though this time it wasn't the ranch that drew him back. He stopped instead at a small cafe in town, its faded awning fluttering in the breeze. With shaking hands, he penned a letter, each word an attempt to bridge the vast, bitter space now stretching between him and Luke. I never meant to betray you. I was sent here with one purpose, but somewhere along the way, you became the only truth that mattered. I've walked away from the deal. There is nothing left tying me to that life, except regret for the pain I've caused you. I'm leaving, but if there's still any part of you willing to believe me, you know where to find me. He left the envelope with the old woman behind the counter, along with Luke's name scrawled across it. She eyed him knowingly, but said nothing. 2 weeks passed. Evan returned to New York, though the city felt more suffocating than ever. The skyline that once stirred ambition now seemed like a cage of glass and steel. He couldn't shake the memory of Luke's eyes, the way they had burned with betrayal, yet beneath it, with something deeper, something wounded, not indifferent. He quit his job within days. The final report on the ranch never submitted. Corporate calls went unanswered. There was nothing left worth salvaging in that life. In quiet moments, Evan wondered if Luke had read the letter. Wondered if forgiveness could ever be wrested from the ruins of what they'd shared. At the ranch, Luke avoided the town and its knowing glances. Word traveled fast in places like this. He threw himself into the land, hands blistered from long days spent fixing fences that didn't truly need fixing. But at night, when the work could no longer drown out his thoughts, he'd find himself drawn back to that envelope, now worn soft from handling. He had read Evan's words more times than he'd admit, each sentence a blade pressed against old scars. Trust was not something Luke gave lightly, but neither was love. And no matter how fiercely he tried to deny it, the emptiness Evan's absence left behind could not be ignored. When the autumn fair arrived, a town tradition too stubborn to fade, Luke found himself there, boots kicking dust across the fairground. He told himself it was habit, nothing more. The air carried the sharp scent of caramel and hay. Children laughed beneath strings of colored lights. Life moved forward, indifferent to the wounds of two stubborn men. And yet when Evan appeared, through the crowd, jeans worn now, face thinner, gaze uncertain, Luke's breath caught in his throat. Their eyes locked across the space of a dozen heartbeats. Evan approached slowly, as though fearing any sudden movement might shatter the fragile truce that hadn't yet been spoken. "I didn't know if you'd be here," Evan said softly, voice roughened by weeks of uncertainty. Luke studied him, every instinct urging caution. But beneath it, something warmer stirred, a weary hope, fragile and persistent. Didn't expect to be. They stood in the shadow of the old bandstand, the noise of the fair fading around them. "I meant what I wrote," Evan continued. "I walked away from everything. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed you to know it wasn't all a lie." Luke's jaw tightened, old anger flaring before subsiding beneath the deeper ache. "You broke my trust." "I know," Evan's voice cracked. "And I'll spend however long it takes proving that I'm not the man I was when I first came here." A long silence stretched between them, laden with the weight of what had been lost and what might still be reclaimed. Finally, Luke exhaled, the fight bleeding from his shoulders. "I don't know if I can forget, but maybe I can try to believe you." Evan's breath hitched, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "No promises," Luke warned. "No more lies." "None," Evan whispered. They didn't touch, not yet. But when Luke nodded toward the quiet stretch of pasture beyond the fair, a silent invitation in the gesture, Evan followed. As they walked beneath the starlit sky, side by side once more, the whispers began anew. People are very surprised how there can be so much love between a cowboy and a city boy. And beneath that wide, endless sky, perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a story waiting to be written.